December 17th, 1944. Belgium. 47 German women stood on frozen ground and waited to die. One of them spoke 2 words that would change everything. But she didn't know the American soldier listening had buried his brother 3 months earlier, killed by Germans at Normandy. The winter of 1944 had settled over Western Europe like a sentence. By mid-December, the German armies were retreating eastward under constant pressure, leaving behind roads clogged with broken formations and civilians fleeing toward uncertain destinations. Among those caught in the collapse were women, clerks, radio operators, medical auxiliaries, anti-aircraft helpers, pressed into service during the final desperate years of the Reich, now abruptly severed from everything familiar. For Anna Bergman, capture arrived without violence. It arrived with confusion, shouted commands in a language she barely understood, hands raised, weapons lowered by those who carried them, then movement. Long, draining movement away from the collapsing front through villages already scarred by war across fields stiff with frost toward a destination no one would name. Anna was 24 years old, dark hair tucked beneath a Wehrmacht communications cap, hands that shook not from cold yet, but from a fear she was trying very hard not to show. Before the war, she had been a telephone operator in Munich, connecting calls, hearing voices, living a small, ordinary life. Then came the draft notice in 1943. Fräulein Bergman, you are required for service in the Wehrmacht Signals Corps. No choice, no appeal, just orders. She learned radio equipment, Morse code, how to maintain communications under artillery fire, how to keep her head down and follow instructions without question. She was not a Nazi believer. She was simply a German girl caught in the machinery of a war that had long since stopped making sense to anyone paying attention. In her coat pocket, Anna carried something that could get her executed if discovered. A photograph, black and white, creased from being touched too many times. It showed a young American pilot in a flight jacket grinning at the camera. On the back, handwriting in English. To Anna, with gratitude. Lieutenant James Rourke, USAAF, May 1943. She had found him in a Bavarian forest after his B-17 went down. Broken leg, concussion, alone and terrified. She could have reported him, should have reported him. Instead, she hid him in her family's barn for 3 days, fed him, gave him civilian clothes and her father's bicycle, helped him reach the Swiss border. He gave her the photograph before he left. So I remember the German girl who saved my life. If the Gestapo had discovered what she'd done, they would have shot her. If the Wehrmacht found the photograph now, the result would be the same. But Anna kept it anyway. A small piece of evidence that mercy still existed somewhere in the world.
The American forces took her unit on December 16th. 1 moment retreat. The next, American voices everywhere shouting commands she didn't understand. Rifles pointed. Hands up. It happened so fast there was no time to be afraid. That came later. They separated the women from the male prisoners almost immediately. American Army regulations, though, Anna didn't know that yet. She only knew she was being herded into a different truck, driven to a different location, surrounded by guards who looked impossibly young and impossibly well fed. The holding area was a rectangle of frozen earth surrounded by wire. No barracks, no tents, no structures of any kind, just ground and guards, and the first bite of evening cold. 2,200 miles away in La Crosse, Wisconsin, a dairy farm sat quiet under its own winter. 300 acres, 40 head of cattle. A barn built in 1898 by a German immigrant named Otto Müller, who had come to America seeking something better than the rigid hierarchies of the old country. His grandson, David Carter, had grown up in that barn, milking cows at 5 in the morning, shoveling manure, mending fences, learning the kind of work that built strong backs and quiet endurance. David Carter was 22 years old, tall, farm-strong, eyes that had seen more in 8 months than most men see in a lifetime. He'd enlisted in March 1944, shipped to Europe in October, and spent the last 2 months learning that war was nothing like the newsreels back home suggested. In his breast pocket, Carter carried a telegram. Western Union, delivered November the 3rd. 3 weeks ago. He'd read it once, folded it carefully, and hadn't looked at it since. Dear David, Robert was killed June 7th at Normandy. German sniper. He didn't suffer. Please come home safe. Love, Mother. Robert, his older brother, 24 years old. The one who was supposed to take over the farm. The one who'd enlisted first back in 1942 when the war still seemed like an adventure worth having. The one who wrote letters home about French countryside and English girls and how the food was terrible but the cause was just. Gone. Killed by a German bullet. And David had volunteered for prisoner of war guard duty to see if he could look at Germans without hating them. He wasn't sure yet if he could.
The holding area in Belgium was temporary, a processing point. Prisoners arrived, got documented, then moved on to more permanent facilities. The problem was that the entire system was overwhelmed. Entire German formations were surrendering as the front collapsed. Thousands of prisoners every day. The administrative machinery couldn't keep pace. So the women stood, and kept standing because no one had told them they could do anything else. Carter drew perimeter guard duty that evening, walking the fence line, rifle slung, watching 47 German women in thin Wehrmacht uniforms try not to shiver as the temperature dropped and darkness settled in. He'd expected soldiers, hard-faced, defiant. Instead, he saw girls, some younger than Robert had been, scared, cold, trying very hard to maintain some kind of dignity in a situation that offered none. One of them caught his attention, dark-haired, standing very straight despite the cold, refusing to lean on anyone to show weakness to give in to what must have been growing desperation. She reminded him of his sister Margaret. Same stubborn pride. Same age, too, probably. These people killed your brother, Carter thought. These people's countrymen. Maybe not her specifically, but people just like her. Soldiers following orders, doing their duty. But she looked terrified. The ground beneath the women's feet had been frozen for 2 weeks. Belgium in December was cold, but this year winter had arrived early and stayed. Daytime temperatures barely rose above freezing. At night, they plunged into the teens. The soil had turned to something harder than packed earth. It had the texture of stone, the rigidity of concrete. Carter knew this kind of cold. Wisconsin winters taught you what frozen ground could do, how it pulled heat from your body through the soles of your boots, how standing on it for hours could leave you unable to feel your feet, how frostbite crept up from the toes, silent and devastating. He watched the women shift their weight, stamp their feet lightly, pull their coats tighter, breathe into their hands. Small gestures against a cold that didn't care about gestures. An hour passed, then 2. Processing was delayed. Paperwork backed up. Transport issues. The women kept standing because no one had told them to do anything else. Carter remembered a winter morning in 1938. He'd been 16, found one of the barn cats collapsed in a snowdrift, half frozen, nearly dead. His father had looked at it and shrugged. Just a cat, David. Barn's full of them. But Carter had wrapped it in his coat anyway, brought it inside, warmed it by the stove. The cat lived. His father had watched him do it without comment, then later said something Carter never forgot. You either do something about suffering when you see it or you don't. But don't just stand there watching. That's the only thing that's actually wrong. At 7:30, Carter saw the dark-haired woman lean against another prisoner for support. Just for a moment. Just enough to shift weight off feet that probably couldn't feel the ground anymore. Then she straightened again, jaw set, refusing to give in. Carter made a decision. He walked to where Corporal Thomas Hayes stood near the gate. Hayes was 26, from Georgia, a medic with a slow drawl and a practical mind. They'd served together since October. Tom Carter said, "They're freezing out there." Hayes looked up from his clipboard.
So, they're prisoners. Germans. They're women. Standing 3 hours on frozen ground. You know what that does? Hayes frowned. Protocol says they stand during processing. Protocol didn't plan for this, Carter said. Ground's frozen solid. Another few hours we're looking at frostbite. Maybe worse. Hayes studied him. They're the enemy, Dave. Carter reached into his breast pocket, pulled out the telegram, handed it to Hayes without a word. Hayes read it. His expression changed. Jesus, Dave. I didn't know. I'm so sorry. Carter took the telegram back, folded it, put it away. So, if I can do the right thing here, he said quietly, why can't we? Hayes was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. Let's talk to Morrison. Lieutenant Frank Morrison was 28 years old, Boston-born, Harvard-educated, the kind of officer who carried a copy of the Geneva Convention in his field pack and had actually read it. Twice. Once during training. Once the night before when he learned female prisoners were arriving and no one seemed to know quite what to do with them. Morrison had a secret he didn't share with his men. His father's name wasn't Morrison. It was Klaus Müller, a German immigrant who'd arrived in America in 1921, fleeing political persecution in Bavaria. Klaus had been imprisoned for 6 months for the crime of asking for better treatment of factory workers. He'd been beaten by guards, denied food, treated like an animal. When Klaus Müller became Frank Morrison Sr. in 1924,
He told his son one thing. America does things differently. That's why we're here. Remember that. Morrison walked the perimeter with Carter and Hayes, stopped at the fence line, looked at the women standing in the enclosure. Then he knelt, removed his glove, pressed his hand flat against the frozen earth. It felt like touching a tombstone. He stayed kneeling for a moment, thinking about his father, about Bavaria,
About guards who beat prisoners for asking for water, about the difference between the country his father fled and the country he'd fled to. Morrison stood, brushed frost from his knee. "Get the engineer depot on the radio," he said. Sir Hayes began. "There's no authorization for anything." "I'm the authorization," Morrison said. "Article 25, Geneva Convention. Prisoners of war must be lodged in buildings or huts affording protection against cold and dampness." He looked at the frozen ground. "We don't have buildings or huts, so we improvise. I'll put it in writing." What Morrison didn't tell them was that his father had nearly died in that Bavarian prison. Pneumonia, brought on by being forced to sleep on a concrete floor in January. Klaus survived only because one single guard, had slipped him a blanket. Klaus never forgot that guard's name. Friedrich Adler, a German who showed mercy when he didn't have to. Morrison intended to be Friedrich Adler tonight. The truck arrived at 8:30, headlights cutting through Belgian darkness. The women watched through the wire, uncertain what was happening. Guards assembled at the gate. The truck carried wooden pallets, crates, bales of straw, rolls of canvas tarp. Nothing fancy, nothing special. Just materials scavenged from engineer overflow and supply depot surplus. The straw came from Wisconsin, shipped across the Atlantic to feed army horses in the European theater. Some of it came from the Carter family farm. David didn't know that yet. Wouldn't know it for another 30 years. But fate has a way of connecting things that seem random. Guards carried the materials into the women's enclosure, laid the pallets in rough rows, spread the straw thick over them, golden, dry, smelling faintly of harvest and home and things that had nothing to do with war. They stretched canvas over the straw, not beds, not shelter, just a barrier, something between human flesh and frozen earth. Carter walked to the fence, gestured to the women. "Sit," he said. The women didn't move. Anna Bergman stared at the pallets, at the straw, at the American soldier gesturing for them to sit down. This had to be a trick, a test, some kind of trap. In the Wehrmacht, sitting without permission meant punishment. Showing weakness meant consequences. Asking for anything meant you were soft, unreliable, disposable. But her feet had stopped sending signals 20 minutes ago, just numb stumps at the ends of her legs, and the canvas looked dry, and the guards seemed to genuinely want them to sit. Anna made a choice. She stepped forward, lowered herself slowly onto the canvas-covered straw. She flinched, expecting the cold to bite through anyway, expecting the ground's frozen certainty to press up through the thin barrier. Instead, the straw compressed beneath her weight. The canvas crinkled softly, and the ground felt distant, still cold but no longer an enemy. No longer pulling heat from her body with relentless hunger. Anna exhaled, a sound that was almost a sob. Her shoulders dropped for the first time in 4 hours. The other women saw her sit, saw that nothing bad happened, saw her shoulders drop and her breathing ease. One by one they lowered themselves onto the pallets. 47 German women sitting on American straw in the middle of Belgium. Some cried quietly, not from fear, from relief so overwhelming it felt like grief. Ketta Werner sat next to Anna. Ketta was 28, anti-aircraft auxiliary from Hamburg, practical, protective of the younger women. She looked at Anna with an expression of complete bewilderment. "Why did they do this?" Ketta whispered in German. Anna shook her head. "I don't know." From the perimeter, Carter watched them settle, watched the tension leave their postures, watched relief replace fear, at least for the moment. He thought about Robert, about the German sniper who killed him, about whether mercy made things even or just made them more complicated. He didn't have an answer yet. Hayes approached with a thermos of coffee. "Morrison's orders," he said. "Give them something warm." They passed tin cups through the fence. Weak coffee. Army issue. Bitter and watery, nothing like real coffee, but warm. God warm. The women cupped their hands around the tin. Felt heat seep into frozen fingers. Sipped bitter liquid that tasted like the first good thing that had happened to them in months. Anna drank her coffee slowly. Felt warmth spread through her chest. Looked at the young American guard who'd checked the ground. Who'd made this happen somehow.
Who could have left them standing and didn't? She didn't understand it. Any of it. Everything she'd been told about Americans, about captivity, about what to expect if captured. All of it contradicted by straw and canvas and bitter coffee.
What else had they lied to her about?
The question settled in her mind like a seed in soil. Small, quiet, but with the potential to grow into something that would reshape everything she thought she knew. Before we continue this story, I want to ask something. If your father or grandfather served in World War II in Europe, the Pacific, or here at home, hit the like button. We're building a community to preserve these stories, and every like helps us reach more people who remember. Now back to that frozen field in Belgium. The temperature dropped to 19 degrees that night. The women slept in shifts, huddled under coats and canvas, still cold, but no longer in danger. Guards paced the perimeter. The war continued somewhere to the east, and on a rectangle of frozen Belgian earth, 47 German women survived a night they'd expected to kill them.
Because one woman asked, and one soldier noticed.
And one officer remembered his father's stories about the difference between countries that punish requests for mercy and countries that grant them. In the morning there would be roll call, processing, thin soup and black bread, and the beginning of a journey that would take Anna Bergman across an ocean to Mississippi, to a permanent camp, to a life she couldn't imagine yet. But that night, December 17th, 1944, Anna lay on American straw and touched the photograph in her pocket. The American pilot she'd saved. The American guards who'd just saved her. Mercy flowing in both directions across enemy lines. Morning came to the Belgian holding area with a pale sun that offered light but no warmth. Anna woke stiff and sore, every muscle protesting the night spent on wooden pallets. But she woke, and her feet, though still numb, were there, still attached, still functional. Around her the other women stirred, breath rising in white clouds, canvas crackling with frost.
The straw beneath them had compressed during the night, packed down by body weight and the relentless cold, but it had done its job. It had kept the frozen earth at bay. At 6 in the morning, a whistle blew, sharp, authoritative, the universal language of military discipline. The women rose slowly, joints protesting, and assembled for roll call. They stood, because standing was what prisoners did. But between counts, the guards gestured for them to sit back down on the pallets. Small mercy, but mercy nonetheless. Anna noticed the young guard from the night before, the one who'd checked the ground. He stood at the perimeter rifle slung over his shoulder, watching the women with an expression she couldn't quite read. Not hostility, not pity, something else, something that looked almost like recognition. Carter hadn't slept much. He'd pulled a 4-hour watch shift, then lain awake in his tent thinking about Robert, about the telegram in his pocket, about 47 German women sleeping on straw his family's farm had probably produced. The connections felt too strange to be coincidence, too deliberate to be random. At 7, breakfast arrived. Tin mess kits distributed down the line. Army rations, standard issue. Nothing special for prisoners, but nothing worse than what the guards ate either. Anna looked down at her kit. Oatmeal. Thick, bland, steam rising. A piece of black bread, dense and heavy. And 2 strips of bacon. She stared at the bacon like it was a hallucination. Meat. Actual meat. They hadn't seen meat in the Wehrmacht for months. Rations had been reduced, then reduced again, then replaced with substitutes that barely qualified as food. Sawdust bread. Ersatz coffee made from acorns. Soup so thin you could see through it. But this was bacon. Real bacon. Fat, glistening at the edges. Smell of salt and smoke and something that represented abundance in a way Anna had almost forgotten existed. She picked up a strip, bit into it. Grease coated her tongue. Salt exploded across her taste buds. The texture was crispy on the outside, chewy in the center, and her body responded to it like a dying plant responds to water. Desperate, grateful, overwhelmed. Keta sat beside her, eating her own bacon with the focused intensity of someone who knows this might be the only good thing that happens all day. When she finished, she looked at Anna with tears in her eyes. "I'd forgotten food could taste like this," Keta said in German. Anna nodded. She didn't trust herself to speak. From his position at the perimeter, Hayes watched the women devour their breakfast. Watched the way they held the bacon like it was precious metal. Watched tears mix with grease on more than one face. He turned to Carter. "They act like they haven't eaten in weeks." Carter watched the dark-haired woman, the one who'd asked about the ground. She was eating slowly, deliberately, like she was trying to make each bite last. "Maybe they haven't," he said. Hayes was quiet for a moment. "Then Jesus, we're gonna win this war." Carter nodded. Yeah, we already have. After breakfast came processing, names, ranks, units, identifying information recorded in triplicate on forms that would follow these women across an ocean and into a system designed, however imperfectly, to treat them as human beings rather than animals. Anna's turn came mid-morning. She approached the processing table where Lieutenant Morrison sat with a clipboard and a box of personal effects waiting to be catalogued. Name, Morrison said. His German was functional but accented. Anna Bergman, rank and unit. Nachrichtenhelferin, communications auxiliary, signals corps. Morrison made notes, then gestured to her pockets. Personal items on the table, please. Anna's heart stopped. The photograph. She'd forgotten about the photograph. Her hands shook as she emptied her pockets. Wehrmacht ID card, expired ration card, and the photograph.
Creased, worn, damning. Morrison picked it up, studied it. A young American pilot in a flight jacket grinning at the camera. He turned it over, read the inscription on the back. To Anna, with gratitude. Lieutenant James Rourke, USAAF, May 1943. The silence stretched. Anna felt her pulse in her throat. This was it. This was where everything ended. Treason. Aiding the enemy. They'd shoot her or send her to a military prison or worse. Morrison looked up. His eyes met hers. Where did you get this? Anna's voice came out barely above a whisper. I can explain. Go ahead. The story came out in broken English mixed with German. May 1943. American bomber shot down near Munich. Pilot ejected, landed in forest. Anna found him before Wehrmacht search parties. Broken leg, concussion. She hid him in her family's barn. 3 days. Fed him. Gave him civilian clothes. Her father's bicycle. Helped him reach Switzerland. The pilot gave her the photograph before he left. So I remember the German girl who saved my life. If anyone discovered what she'd done, Anna said, her voice shaking, they would execute me. And my mother. But I couldn't leave him there. He was hurt. Morrison listened without interrupting. When she finished, he looked at the photograph again, studied the pilot's face, the inscription. Then he looked at Anna. You risked your life for an American airman, he said. Anna nodded. He was just a man. Hurt. I couldn't watch him die. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Then he did something Anna didn't expect. He handed the photograph back. Official inspection finds 1 ID card, 1 ration card, Morrison said. No photograph. Gets complicated otherwise. Anna stared at him. What? This photograph doesn't exist, Morrison said. You understand, if anyone asks, you never had it. Because if it goes in your file, questions get asked. Investigations happen. And I think you've been through enough. He slipped the photograph back into her hand. His expression was unreadable but not unkind. You did the right thing in 1943, he said quietly, even when it cost you everything. So I'm going to do the right thing now. Anna's eyes filled with tears. She tried to speak but couldn't. Morrison nodded once, then gestured to the next woman in line. Anna walked away on legs that barely supported her weight. She clutched the photograph in her fist. Couldn't process what had just happened. Couldn't reconcile the mercy she'd just received with everything she'd been taught to expect from captivity. Keta found her sitting alone near the fence 10 minutes later. Anna was crying silently, photograph pressed against her chest. What happened? Keta asked. Are you all right? Anna looked at her friend, shook her head, not in denial, but in disbelief. I don't understand them, she said. Any of them. The straw, the food, now this. Why are they kind to us? Keta sat beside her. Maybe, she said slowly, maybe because they're not what we were told they were. The question hung in the cold December air. What else had they been lied to about? What else had the propaganda gotten wrong? If Americans weren't monsters, if Geneva Convention wasn't just words, if mercy was actually possible, even between enemies, then what did that mean about everything else they'd believed Anna didn't have answers? Only questions that grew heavier with each passing hour. That afternoon, word came down. The women would be transferred within the week. Destination United States, Camp McCain, Mississippi, a permanent prisoner of war facility where they would remain until the war ended and repatriation could be arranged. Mississippi. Anna had no idea where that was, no concept of American geography beyond vague notions of New York and California. Mississippi could have been on the moon for all she knew, but it meant crossing the Atlantic in winter. It meant leaving Europe, leaving any possibility of escape or early release, leaving everything familiar behind. It meant accepting that this war was over for them, that Germany had lost, that the future was unknowable. Fear returned. Not the immediate fear of cold or hunger, but the deeper fear of uncertainty, of not knowing what came next. December 24th arrived, Christmas Eve. Anna had lost track of dates, but the guards reminded them. Tomorrow was Christmas. The chaplain would hold a service. The women were invited to attend, not required. Invited. That word. Invited. As if they had agency, as if their choices mattered. Anna went to the service. So did most of the others. Curiosity more than faith. The chapel was a tent with a field stove and wooden benches and a cross made from scrap lumber. American soldiers filled half the benches, German prisoners the other half, together. The chaplain was an older man, 50 maybe, grey hair, kind eyes. He spoke about peace on earth and goodwill toward men, about how Christmas was celebrated on both sides of every war, about how the birth of hope happened in the darkest time of year for a reason. Then he announced a hymn, Silent Night. Anna's breath caught, Stille Nacht, the song from her childhood, from Munich Christmases before the war, her mother singing it while decorating their small tree, her father's off-key bass joining in, warmth and light and everything that war had destroyed. The chaplain began in English, Silent Night, Holy Night, all is calm, all is bright. Then without prompting, the German women began singing in their own language, Stille Nacht, Heilige Nacht, Alles schläft, einsam wacht. 2 languages, same melody, same hope, same longing for peace that transcended nationality and uniform and the brutal mathematics of war. Anna sang and cried at the same time. Around her, other women did the same. Some of the American soldiers had tears on their faces too. The chaplain's voice cracked on the final verse. When it ended, silence filled the tent. Not awkward. Sacred. After the service, Hayes approached Anna. He held out a small package wrapped in brown paper. "Merry Christmas," he said. Anna took it carefully, unwrapped it. Inside was a Hershey's chocolate bar. Brown wrapper. Simple. Ordinary. And more valuable than gold. "I can't," Anna started. "You can," Hayes said. "It's Christmas. Even in war, some things still matter." Anna looked at the chocolate bar. At Hayes. At the tent full of enemies who'd just sung together. "I don't understand," she said. "Why are you kind to us?" Hayes thought for a moment, then shrugged. "Because it's Christmas," he said. "And because we're supposed to be. That's what makes us different, isn't it? We don't stop being decent just because it's hard." He walked away before Anna could respond. She stood holding the chocolate bar, feeling its weight in her palm, and understood that she was witnessing something she had no framework to process. Not just kindness, but principle. Not just mercy, but conviction that mercy mattered even when it cost something. Especially when it cost something. That night, Anna shared the chocolate with Keta and 2 other women. 4 pieces each. Sweetness melting on their tongues. Richness that felt almost obscene after months of deprivation. Keta spoke quietly. "My husband would have liked these Americans." Anna knew Keta was married, but they'd never discussed it. Wehrmacht women didn't talk about their pasts. Too dangerous. Too painful. "Your husband," Anna asked gently. Heinrich Keta said, "School teacher in Hamburg." She was quiet for a long time. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he was executed in October 1942 for hiding a Jewish family in the school basement. Anna's hand froze halfway to her mouth. "Keta, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. The Gestapo gave me a choice." Keta continued, "Prison or Wehrmacht service. I chose service. To survive. To maybe make sense of why he died." She looked at Anna with eyes that had seen too much. Heinrich believed people should be decent to each other, no matter what. The Nazis killed him for it. And now these Americans, these enemies, they're being exactly what Heinrich believed people could be. The irony sat heavy between them. Keta's husband executed for the values Americans were demonstrating. The regime that killed him now collapsing under the weight of countries that actually practiced what Heinrich had preached. These stories matter. Many of you watching have shared incredible stories in the comments about POW camps in your states during the war. Stories your fathers told your grandfathers witnessed. Keep them coming. This community is preserving them together. Now what happened next would test everything Anna believed about mercy. On December the 27th, Keta developed a cough. Nothing serious at first. Everyone had colds. The damp Belgian winter guaranteed it. But by the 28th, her cough was productive. By the 29th, she was burning with fever. Anna watched her friend deteriorate with growing panic. She'd seen pneumonia before, knew how quickly it could kill, knew that in the Wehrmacht illness meant you were a burden. Medical care was reserved for those who could return to duty. The rest were left to recover or die on their own. Hayes noticed Keta during morning inspection, saw the fever flush in her cheeks, the way she swayed standing up. He checked her temperature, 103 degrees, listened to her lungs, heard the rattle that meant fluid was building. "This is bad," he told Morrison. "Real bad. Pneumonia. Maybe worse." Morrison didn't hesitate. "Transfer her to the field hospital." Anna couldn't believe what she was hearing. "But she's a prisoner," she said in broken English. "We are enemies. We—"
Morrison looked at her. "She's sick," he said. "That's what matters." Within an hour, an ambulance arrived. Keta, barely conscious, was loaded onto a stretcher. Anna was allowed to accompany her. They drove through American rear areas, past supply depots and motor pools, and all the machinery of an army that had more resources than Anna had imagined possible. The field hospital was another world entirely. Clean white tents, medical equipment, doctors and nurses moving with practiced efficiency, and beds. Actual beds with clean sheets and IV stands and oxygen bottles. Keta was placed in a ward alongside American wounded. No separation, no hierarchy. Germans treated the same as Americans, the same doctors, the same medicine, the same care. Anna stood in the corner watching, unable to process what she was seeing. This was the enemy. These were the people she'd been told would torture prisoners. A doctor approached, older, confident, captain's bars on his collar.
He spoke to Anna in perfect German. "Your friend will be all right. We're starting sulfur drugs. Oxygen. IV fluids. She's young and strong. She'll make it." Anna stared at him. "You speak German." The doctor smiled. "I'm third-generation American. My grandfather came from Stuttgart in 1885, became a citizen in 1891, fought for America in the Great War." He gestured to the hospital tent. "This is what he came here for. A country that believes everyone deserves care, even enemies." "Why are you helping us?" Anna asked, the question that haunted her every waking moment. "Because I'm a doctor," he said simply, "and because my father taught me that America is for everyone who believes in it. That includes you, whether you know it yet or not." He walked away to check on other patients. Anna sank into a chair beside Keta's bed. Her friend was unconscious, breathing labored but stabilizing, fourth drip flowing, oxygen hissing softly. Anna sat there for 3 days while Keta fought pneumonia and won. She watched American medics work 18-hour shifts, saw them treat German wounded with the same urgency as their own. Witnessed Geneva Convention not as propaganda, but as lived reality. And she began to understand something fundamental. This wasn't kindness. This was conviction. Americans didn't treat prisoners well because they felt generous. They did it because they believed it was right, because their system demanded it, because mercy wasn't optional, it was foundational. On the third day, Keta opened her eyes, saw Anna, saw the American flag on the tent wall, tried to speak. "They saved me," Anna said quietly. "The Americans saved your life." Keta began to cry, not from pain or fear, but from the weight of understanding crashing down on both of them. Everything they'd been told was a lie. Everything they'd believed about their enemies was backwards. And if that was true, what did it mean about the country they'd served, about the war they'd fought, about the future waiting for them across an ocean in a place called Mississippi? Anna held Keta's hand and had no answers. Only questions that grew heavier by the day. Outside the hospital tent, winter continued. The war ground toward its inevitable conclusion. And 2 German women began the long, painful process of understanding that mercy, real mercy, changes everything it touches, even enemies. Especially enemies. Keta returned to the Belgian camp on New Year's Day 1945, pale, weak, but alive. She carried with her more than just restored health. She carried a small American flag patch given to her by one of the nurses hidden in her pocket next to her heart, a secret token of gratitude that she couldn't fully express in words. The other women gathered around her asking questions. What was it like? The hospital? The Americans? Were they cruel? Did they punish you? Keta shook her head slowly. "They saved me," she said simply. "I was dying. They saved me like I was one of their own." The words settled over the group like snow. Quiet, transformative, impossible to ignore. Within 3 weeks, the orders came through. The women would board transport ships from Antwerp to Norfolk, Virginia. From there, trains south to Mississippi. The journey would take them away from everything they knew and into a future they couldn't imagine. January 20th, 1945. The morning of departure. The women assembled in the pre-dawn cold, carrying small bundles of possessions. Everything they owned fit in cloth sacks. ID cards, a few photographs, letters from home that had somehow survived, the debris of lives interrupted by war. Carter stood at the perimeter as they loaded onto trucks. He'd been assigned to the same transport duty, a logistical coincidence that felt like something more. His eyes found the dark-haired woman, Anna. She looked different than she had 5 weeks ago. Still thin, still marked by hardship, but not broken, not defeated. Their eyes met across the wire for just a moment. Carter nodded. Anna nodded back. No words, just acknowledgement. You saw me. I saw you. We were human to each other when we didn't have to be. The convoy rolled through Belgium toward the coast, through villages rebuilding, past fields where spring would eventually come. The women watched Europe disappear behind them kilometre by kilometre and felt the weight of finality settling in their bones. The Atlantic crossing took 12 days. The Liberty ship had been converted for prisoner transport bunks installed in the hold, separate facilities for the women. Conditions were cramped but not cruel. Rations adequate. Medical care available. The contrast with Wehrmacht transport conditions was absolute. German soldiers had been packed into trains like cattle, given no food. No water. Left to die if they became inconvenient. These American ships had bunks, blankets, meals 3 times daily, medics checking on seasick prisoners. Anna spent much of the voyage on deck when weather permitted, watching the endless grey Atlantic roll past. Leaving Europe meant leaving any possibility of seeing her mother soon, leaving the ruins of her old life, moving towards something unknown. Carter found her there one afternoon 5 days into the crossing. The deck was mostly empty, too cold for comfort, but Anna seemed drawn to it anyway. Rough crossing? Carter asked, leaning against the rail a few feet away. Anna looked at him, the young sergeant who'd checked the frozen ground. I've never been on a ship before, she said. Me neither, Carter replied. Wisconsin doesn't have oceans. Anna almost smiled. Just a flicker. Where is Wisconsin, middle of the country? Farm country. Dairy cows. Winter that makes Belgium look warm. Like Bavaria, Anna said. Before the war, I lived in Munich. Also cold in winter. They stood in silence for a moment. 2 people who should have been enemies finding common ground in weather and geography. The absurdity of it was not lost on either of them. Your English is getting better, Carter observed. I practice, Anna said. In the camp I listened to the guards, tried to learn. She hesitated. I think I will need it. In America? Carter nodded. You'll be okay. The camp in Mississippi, they follow the rules. Geneva Convention. You'll be treated fairly. Why? Anna asked. The question that never left her. Why do you follow these rules? We are enemies. Carter was quiet for a long time. Then he reached into his pocket, pulled out the telegram, unfolded it carefully, handed it to Anna. She read it. Her English was good enough now. Dear David, Robert was killed June 7th at Normandy. German sniper. He didn't suffer. Please come home safe. Love, Mother. Anna's hands shook. She looked up at Carter. Your brother? Carter nodded. My older brother. He was 24. Supposed to take over the family farm. He took the telegram back, folded it. German soldiers killed him. I am sorry, Anna whispered. I am so sorry. I know, Carter said. And that's the thing. You mean it. I can see that you mean it. He looked out at the ocean. I volunteered for guard duty to see if I could look at Germans without hating them. And I found out that hating is easy. Being decent is harder. But it's the only thing that actually matters. Anna felt tears on her face. The cold wind dried them almost immediately. You could have left us standing, on the frozen ground. You had reason to hate us. Carter shrugged. My father used to say you either do something about suffering when you see it or you don't. But standing there watching and doing nothing, that's the only real sin. He looked at Anna. You were suffering. So I did something. Robert would have wanted that, I think. He was always the better man. They stood together in silence as the ship cut through grey water toward a country Anna had only heard about in propaganda. A country she'd been told was decadent, weak, corrupt. A country that so far had shown her more mercy than her own. February 1st, 1945. Norfolk, Virginia. The first sight of America. Anna stood on deck as the ship entered the harbour. What she saw defied everything she'd expected. The port was massive, Cranes and warehouses and ships of every size. More vessels in one harbour than existed in all of Germany's remaining ports combined. The scale of American industrial power made visible in steel and concrete. More than that, everything was intact. No bomb damage, no ruins. Buildings stood complete, roads functioned, infrastructure hummed with efficiency. The war hadn't touched this place. America fought a global war, and its homeland remained untouched, prosperous, powerful beyond measure.
"We were always going to lose," Anna said quietly to Keta, standing beside her. "How could Germany ever beat this?"
Keta nodded. "We should have seen it. All of us should have seen it. Processing at Norfolk took hours. Medical inspections, paperwork, photographs, fingerprints, the machinery of bureaucracy grinding forward with American efficiency. Then trains. Loaded onto passenger cars, not cattle cars. Seats, not floors. Guards present, but not threatening. The train rolled south through Virginia, the Carolinas, Georgia, Alabama. Anna watched American countryside pass outside the window. Small towns, farms, churches, schools. Everything untouched by war. Children playing, cars on roads, electric lights in every building. The abundance was staggering. Even in small towns, shops had goods in windows. People wore clean clothes. No one looked starved. No one looked desperate. America was fighting the largest war in human history, and its citizens seemed barely inconvenienced.
In Germany, cities were rubble. People scavenged for food. Children went hungry. Here, Anna saw grocery stores with full shelves visible through windows as the train passed. Restaurants, movie theaters, normal life continuing while half the world burned. The contrast made her want to weep. February 5th, Camp McCain, Mississippi. Arrival. The camp sprawled across pine forests in northeast Mississippi. Rows of barracks, mess halls, medical facilities, recreation areas. Fenced, but not oppressive. Guard towers, but guards who looked bored rather than menacing. Anna stepped off the train into warmth that felt like a gift after Belgian winter. 50 degrees, practically summer. Pine trees, red dirt. A different landscape entirely. The camp commander addressed them through a translator. "Welcome to Camp McCain. You are prisoners of war under protection of the Geneva Convention. You will be treated humanely. You will work, but only at non-military labor. You will be fed, clothed, and given medical care. Families will be notified of your location through Red Cross. You may send and receive letters subject to censorship. Escape attempts will be punished, but not brutally. Cooperation will make your time here easier." It sounded too good to be true. Anna waited for the other shoe to drop. It never did. Daily routine established itself quickly. Wake at 6. Breakfast at 7. Work details from 8 to noon. Laundry, kitchen duty, or garden work. Lunch. Free time or additional work details in the afternoon. Dinner at 6. Evenings for letters classes, reading whatever prisoners chose to do with supervised freedom. The food was simple but abundant. More food than Anna had seen in years. Bread, vegetables, meat several times a week, coffee that was still terrible but plentiful. No one went hungry. No one was denied meals as punishment. Anna was assigned to the camp garden, an acre of vegetables that fed both prisoners and guards. She reported to the garden supervisor her first morning and found Corporal Hayes waiting. "You," Anna said, surprised. "Me," Hayes agreed. "Transferred here with the prisoner group. Turns out I'm good with gardens." He gestured to the red Mississippi soil. "Different from Wisconsin. Different from Germany too, I'd guess. But things grow if you treat them right." Over the following weeks, Hayes taught Anna about southern agriculture. Tomatoes, squash, beans, okra. "What is okra?" Anna asked, examining the strange pods. "Southern vegetable," Hayes said. "You'll hate it at first. Everyone does. Slimy when you cook it. But give it time. It grows on you." "Like America?" Anna asked. Hayes laughed. "Yeah, like America." They worked side by side most mornings. Hayes talking about Georgia, his family's farm, the difference between red clay and black soil. Anna asking questions, learning English idioms, slowly rebuilding something that felt almost like normalcy. One morning in March, Hayes pulled a cloth sack from his pocket. Inside were seeds, different varieties, carefully labelled. "These are extras," Hayes said, "from our seed stock, tomatoes, beans, squash." He handed the sack to Anna. "For when you go home. Munich soil might grow them." Anna stared at the seeds. "Why do you give me this?" "So you remember," Hayes said simply. "Not all of it was bad. Some of it was just people being decent to each other. Plant these when you get home. Grow something. Remember that even in the worst times, things can still grow if you give them the chance." Anna tucked the seed sack into her pocket, felt its weight there, a promise of future gardens in soil that was currently frozen under occupation. March brought news from Europe. The Rhine crossed, Allied armies pushing deep into Germany, cities falling, the end approaching like an avalanche. Anna worried constantly about her mother. Letters could be sent, but responses were rare and delayed.
Postal systems in Germany had collapsed. Communications were chaos. She wrote anyway, every week. Short letters saying she was alive, she was safe, she was in Mississippi, she was treated well. Please write. Please let me know you're alive. Weeks passed with no response. Anna tried not to imagine the worst, tried to focus on garden work and English lessons and the small routines that made captivity bearable. May 15th, 1945. 1 week after Germany's surrender. The mail came. Hayes delivered it personally, holding out a thin envelope with Red Cross markings. Anna's hands shook as she took it. Her mother's handwriting. Familiar. Beloved. Real. She opened it carefully, as if rough handling might make it disappear. My dearest Anna, I am writing this April 20th. I received your letter March 15th. I am alive. The apartment is damaged but standing. Munich is rubble. We have no food, no heat, but we are alive. Your father died in an air raid last November. I could not tell you before.
But you are alive, and that gives me reason to continue. Stay in America as long as you can. There is nothing here for you now. I love you. Mother. Anna read the letter twice, then a third time. Then she folded it carefully and walked to the far corner of the garden where no one could see her and collapsed. Her father. Dead for 6 months, and she hadn't known. Her mother. Alive but barely surviving in the ruins. Munich destroyed. Germany destroyed. Everything gone except the fragile thread of continued existence. Hayes found her there an hour later, sitting against the fence letter clutched in her hand, tears dried on her face. He sat down beside her without asking permission. Didn't speak. Just sat. After a long silence, Anna said quietly, "My father is dead. Last November. I didn't know." "I'm sorry," Hayes said. He meant it. She could hear it in his voice. "My mother is alive, in Munich. But there is nothing there anymore. Just ruins." Hayes nodded. "My father died when I was 12. TB. It doesn't matter if it's war or disease. Gone is gone." They sat together in the Mississippi sun, former enemies, sharing grief that transcended nationality, finding that loss was the same in any language. "You'll get through this," Hayes said eventually. "You're stronger than you think." "How do you know?" Anna asked. "Because you're still here," Hayes said. "You survived the war. The retreat, the cold, the crossing. You're still here. That takes strength most people don't have." Anna wanted to believe him. Wasn't sure she could. Summer came to Mississippi with heat that made Anna understand why the South had a reputation for slowness. Moving fast in that humidity felt impossible. The garden flourished. Tomatoes ripened. Squash produced prolifically. Okra grew tall, and Anna, true to Hayes' prediction, slowly learned to tolerate it. The 4th of July brought celebrations to the camp. The Guards organized a baseball game. Americans versus Americans, but prisoners were allowed to watch. Hayes tried to explain the rules to Anna. 3 strikes, you're out. 4 balls, you walk. But if you hit it over the fence, you run all the bases. "This makes no sense," Anna said. "Exactly." Hayes grinned. "That's baseball." They watched the game together. Anna didn't understand the rules, but she understood the atmosphere. The cheering, the camaraderie, the way Americans turned everything into competition, but friendly competition. Even war couldn't stop them from playing games. After the game came a barbecue. Smoked pork, Tennessee-style, Hayes explained. Corn on the cob, slathered in butter and salt. And Coca-Cola in glass bottles, ice-cold, beading with condensation in the summer heat. Anna's first Coke was a revelation. Sweet, fizzy, cold enough to make her teeth ache. It tasted like liquid prosperity, like everything America represented. Abundance, innovation, the ability to make luxury commonplace. She drank it slowly, savoring every bubble, and thought about Munich, where water was rationed and beer was gone, and coffee was made from acorns, where a cold, sweet drink was unimaginable luxury. The distance between the world she'd left and the world she inhabited now felt infinite. Fall 1945
brought the end of the war in the Pacific. Japan surrendered in August. The war was over, completely over. And the question became what happened to prisoners now. Repatriation would take time. Germany was divided into occupation zones. Infrastructure needed rebuilding. Displaced persons numbered in the millions. The women would remain at Camp McCain until arrangements could be made. Likely spring 1946. Anna settled into waiting. She worked the garden, studied English, wrote letters to her mother that sometimes received responses, sometimes vanished into the chaos of occupied Germany. She existed in a strange limbo between war and peace, between captivity and freedom, between past and future. In February 1946, the orders finally came. Repatriation scheduled for March. The women would return to Germany, to whatever remained, to whatever future they could build from ruins. The final week at Camp McCain felt surreal. Anna packed her small bundle of possessions, the photograph of Lieutenant Rourke still hidden, still precious, letters from her mother, a few other items accumulated over the year, and the seed sack from Hayes carefully preserved waiting for Munich soil. The last day Hayes found Anna in the garden. They'd worked together almost every day for 13 months. Developed a friendship that transcended the categories of guard and prisoner, American and German victor, and defeated. "What will you do?" Hayes asked. "In Munich, rebuild," Anna said. "Help my mother, use my English, maybe work for the occupation forces." She looked at the garden they'd tended together.
Try to grow things.
Hayes smiled. "You'll be okay. You're strong, stronger than you know." "You taught me much," Anna said. "About America, about being decent even when it's hard." "You already knew that," Hayes said. "You saved that pilot, remember 1943? You risked everything to be decent. I just reminded you." Anna attempted a hug. Hayes, awkward as always, with emotion accepted it stiffly, then relaxed, hugged her back. "Grow those seeds," he said. "Remember that things can grow even in broken places." "I will," Anna promised. "I will remember all of it. The train north to New York, the ship across the Atlantic, the return to Germany in spring 1946. Anna stood on deck as they approached the devastated European coast and felt the weight of everything she was returning to. Ruins, hunger, occupation, uncertainty, but also her mother, her city, her language. Home, however broken. The ship docked. The women disembarked. Processing through occupation authorities. Red Cross workers directing them to their home regions. Transport when available. Chaos organized by exhausted officials trying to manage millions of displaced souls. Anna made her way to Munich over 3 days, hitchhiking on army trucks, walking when no transport existed, sleeping in Red Cross shelters, moving through a landscape that looked like the end of the world. Munich was unrecognizable, block after block of rubble. Buildings collapsed, streets barely passable, people scavenging through debris. The beautiful city of her childhood transformed into a graveyard of stone and broken dreams. She found her mother's apartment building by memory more than navigation. The street signs were gone, the landmarks destroyed, but the building still stood damaged but intact. 4th floor, same apartment, same door, though the paint was burned away. Anna knocked, waited, heard slow footsteps inside. The door opened. Her mother stood there, thinner than Anna remembered, greyer, older, but alive, real, present. They embraced without words, held each other in the doorway of a damaged apartment in a destroyed city, wept together, and began the long, slow process of rebuilding lives from the fragments that remained. That night, Anna showed her mother the seed sack, American vegetable seeds, from a Georgia corporal who taught her that decency matters even between enemies. Her mother turned the seeds over in her hand. American vegetables in German soil. Anna nodded. Why not? Everything else is mixed up now. Might as well grow something good from it. Spring, 1947. Anna planted the seeds in a small plot behind the apartment building, turned the rubble-strewn earth, added what compost she could find, watered carefully with rationed water, waited. The seeds grew. Tomatoes, beans, squash, American plants in German soil, thriving against odds, producing food in a hungry city, connecting two places that had been enemies and might someday be something else. Anna tended the garden and thought about frozen ground and straw pallets and bitter coffee and a sergeant who checked the earth before making a decision. Thought about mercy as practice rather than theory, about Geneva Convention as lived reality, about the difference between countries that punish requests for kindness and countries that grant them. The years passed.
Anna found work as a translator for American occupation forces, met a German engineer named Karl Hoffmann, who'd survived the war as a civilian who'd never joined the party, who believed in rebuilding rather than relitigating the past. They married in 1950. A daughter arrived in 1952. They named her Keta after the friend who'd survived pneumonia in an American field hospital. Life stabilized. The garden continued to produce. The American seeds saved and replanted each year became a tradition. Anna never told her daughter the full story. Not yet. Some memories needed time to ripen like fruit. November 1975. Munich.
Anna Hoffmann, 54 years old now, stood in her kitchen sorting mail. Bills, advertisements, a letter from Keta Werner in Hamburg, and an envelope from America. Return address, David Carter, La Crosse, Wisconsin. Anna's hands shook as she opened it. Dear Anna Bergman Hoffmann, I don't know if you remember me. Sergeant David Carter, Belgium, December 1944. I was one of the guards at the holding area where you were first brought in, where the ground was frozen. I've thought about that night many times over the years. About the woman who asked if she could sit. About the decision I made to report it. I returned to Wisconsin in 1946, took over the family farm. Married Margaret, my childhood sweetheart. Had 3 children. Normal life. But I never forgot. I wanted to ask you, did we do the right thing? The pallets, the straw, the small mercies.
Did they matter? Or was it all just bureaucracy and protocols? I tracked you down through Red Cross records and occupation force files. I hope that's not intrusive. If you're willing, I'd like to visit Munich, to see how you're doing, to know that it meant something. Respectfully, David Carter. Anna sat down at the kitchen table, took out stationery, began to write. Dear David, I remember you. I remember everything about that night. The cold, the fear, the moment you checked the ground yourself. Yes, it mattered. It mattered more than you can know. You showed me that even in war, humanity could survive. That mercy was not weakness but strength. That America truly believed in the principles it claimed. I have lived a good life because of men like you. Please come to Munich. I would be honored to meet you again. With gratitude, Anna. December 1975. Carter arrived in Munich with his wife Margaret. First trip outside the US since the war. Anna, her husband Karl, and their daughter Keta met them at the hotel. The reunion was awkward at first. 30 years, different languages, different worlds. But then Carter saw the garden behind Anna's apartment building, saw the tomatoes, the beans, the squash. These are from Hayes's seeds, he asked. Every year since 1947, Anna said. American plants in German soil, still growing. Carter's eyes filled with tears. Tom would love that. He died in 1968. Heart attack. I'm sorry, Anna said. He was a good man. They walked through rebuilt Munich together, Carter marveling at the transformation, Anna pointing out landmarks. This was my school. This was the church. This was where the air raid shelter was. All rebuilt now. All new. That evening over dinner, Anna's daughter Keta made an announcement. She was engaged. To Mark Sullivan, an American businessman working in Munich. The wedding would be in spring 1976. Anna looked at Carter, took a breath, asked something she'd been thinking about for weeks. Would you walk her down the aisle? Carl will be there as her father. But you represent something else. The America that showed mercy when it didn't have to. The kindness that made this life possible. Carter couldn't speak for a moment, then nodded. I'd be honored. April 1976. Munich. A small Catholic church, German and American guests. Keta in white, Carter in a suit, nervous, proud. He walked her down the aisle, gave her hand to Mark Sullivan, sat beside Anna in the pew, both of them crying quietly. At the reception, Carter gave a short speech about frozen ground and straw pallets, about how small mercies compound into futures neither side could imagine, about how the daughter of a German prisoner was marrying an American, and somehow that felt like the war finally truly ending. Anna spoke too, about mercy as the hardest kind of strength, about seeds that grow in broken places, about the difference between revenge and reconciliation. The guests applauded. The music started. Carter danced with Anna. I can't believe this, he said. Believe it, Anna replied. You helped make it possible. The years passed again. Carter and Anna maintained correspondence, Christmas cards, occasional letters, a friendship built on shared memory and mutual respect. 1995. Cold War over. Germany reunified. Historians began recording oral histories. A Munich museum project interviewed former POWs' women's experiences in World War II. Anna, 74, now agreed to participate. The interviewer was young, professional, sympathetic.
What do you remember most about captivity? Anna thought for a long moment, then spoke. The ground was frozen, and someone noticed. People ask me about the war, about being a prisoner, about America. They expect big stories, dramatic moments. But I remember small things. A soldier checking the ground, straw under canvas, a cup of bitter coffee,
Seeds given before departure. These were not grand gestures, but they added up. They showed me that rules are just words, unless someone chooses to follow them. That mercy is a decision made moment by moment. That even in war, suffering doesn't have to be the point. I lived because of those small mercies. My daughter exists because of them. My grandchildren. Everything I have traces back to frozen ground and one man who noticed. So when people ask what I remember, I say, I remember that humanity survived. Even in the coldest winter, even between enemies, it survived. And that's what matters. The interviewer finished recording, thanked Anna, left. Anna sat alone in her apartment, looked at 3 items on the shelf. The photograph of Lieutenant Rourke, still creased, still precious. A packet of seeds from Hayes's original gift, dried now, symbolic. A wedding photo from 1976. Carter in a suit, Keta in white, Anna and Carl smiling. The telephone rang. It was Keta calling from Hamburg.
Mama, I have news. Anna's granddaughter had been accepted to university. In America. Boston. She wanted to study international relations. Anna smiled. Of course she does. May 2012. Anna Bergman. Hoffmann died peacefully in Munich at age 92, surrounded by family. Her daughter Keta held her hand. Her grandchildren were there. Her great-grandchildren. Her last words whispered to Keta were in English. Tell them it mattered. Tell them the frozen ground mattered. Keta didn't understand at first. Anna squeezed her hand. The Americans. Belgium. 1944. Tell them mercy matters. Always. Then she closed her eyes and was gone. At the funeral, Keta read from her mother's oral history testimony about frozen ground and straw pallets and small mercies that compound into futures, about humanity surviving even in the darkest times. In the congregation sat Mark Sullivan, Keta's husband of 36 years. Their children, their grandchildren, half American, half German. Living proof that mercy matters. Also present, a letter from Wisconsin, from David Carter's family. David had died in 2008 at 86, but before he died, he'd written a final letter to Anna. His family had held it waiting for the right time to send it. Keta opened it after the service. Dear Anna, if you're reading this, I'm gone. But I wanted you to know something before I go. That night in Belgium, checking the frozen ground, asking for straw, that was the best thing I ever did. Not the biggest, not the most dramatic, but the best, because it taught me that being decent costs so little and matters so much. That mercy isn't weakness, that small choices compound into big consequences. Robert would be proud, I think. He was always the better man, but I tried to be worthy of him. Thank you for reminding me all these years that it mattered, that we did something right in a war full of wrong. Your friend always, David. Keta folded the letter carefully, placed it with her mother's effects, understood finally the full story. The frozen ground, the straw pallets, the seeds that grew in Munich soil for 65 years, the wedding where a former guard walked a former prisoner's daughter down the aisle, the mercy that compounded across generations into her own existence. She looked at her children, her American-German children, living in a united Europe, free, prosperous, at peace. And she understood what her mother had been trying to tell her all along. Sometimes history is shaped not by what happens, but by what doesn't. No punishment followed the request, no retaliation came, only a small adjustment, and the quiet understanding that even in war mercy is always possible. Always. In the vast scale of World War II, no campaign was altered by a pallet of straw. No battle turned because an officer noticed frozen soil. History rarely records such decisions. But for 47 women who sat instead of stood, who rested instead of braced against the cold, the war shifted in that moment. For Anna Bergman, who lived 92 years and left behind children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who exist because someone checked the ground. For David Carter, who came home from war knowing that mercy was harder than hate, but infinitely more valuable. For all of us who inherit the world, they built one small mercy at a time. The frozen ground thawed, spring came, Seeds grew, and mercy planted in the coldest winter of the war bore fruit for 70 years. This story mattered. It still matters. It will always matter. Tell them.